Here's how to position yourself in a marketplace, not only as an expert, but as the go-to person for specific solutions. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. If you want power and influence in a marketplace, whether you're a selling professional, a business executive, or even a middle manager who wants to make sure that they never go a day without a job, the opportunity to cultivate and build relationships cannot be ignored. Now, I know everybody's stuck inside with COVID-19, and if you're out and about in an office space, it's pretty sparse. That's the nature of modern workplace. We're working remote anyway. High-income individuals tend to work remote, or they tend to have a lot of movement in their working. Do not miss the opportunity to connect, to demonstrate, and to establish your credibility in a marketplace larger than your coworkers. I know everybody's busy day in and day out doing the job at hand, and they don't have the time necessarily to connect with posts on LinkedIn, for example, or they don't have the time to write a blog, or they don't have the time to do a podcast. See, those are the popular things that everybody's talking about doing. And in fact, when you discover something interesting, you may want to share that with other people, and that's exactly what happens with the podcasting, the blogging, the social media stuff. But what really creates and cultivates relationships? Well, it's the personal letter. It's the book, or the white paper you wrote in your industry. It's the positioning paper you might have written inside your company in order to take a decision into a new direction. And these things are largely hidden. See, the reason everybody wants to invest in real estate is because most everybody has some kind of real estate or some familiarity with physical property. Very few people seek to invest in intellectual property because it's something that you can't really touch. What I'm asking you to do here is to invest in relationships. Relationships are intangible, and in fact, they break down over time. If you don't cultivate a marriage will fall apart. If you don't cultivate friendships will fall apart. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not always very good at this. Very often, I'll drop the ball. I'll get involved in a project. I'll have 2 or 3 private clients. I'll be working around the clock and excited about working because it's enjoyable work. And then next thing I know, it's all gone. Or I have one of the clients left and the other pieces are kind of wandered away. That ultimately is my fault and the fault of not maintaining interactions. I sometimes will try to do too many interactions. So here's what I suggest for you, and what works very well when I step back and do this. So I tend to focus now on 1 or 2 channels. So some of you have received personal letters. I'll send you a letter. I'll send you a note. You write in with a question and you visit www.insidestrategicrelations.com and you send me a letter at the office, or you send me an email. The emails take a little longer. I see letters immediately. I will personally write you back and try to answer your question. I will, if it's something in my area of experience, I will write back and answer your question. And in the case of it's not my area of experience, I'll let you know that right up front and connect you with somebody who can help you. The key here, though, is that's a one-on-one communications. In the popular world, we think about newspapers, media. Everybody wants to be a celebrity. They want to be their 15 minutes of fame on YouTube. That's because the majority of the population has nothing to lose. If you only make $35,000 a year and you're going to take a chance at being a YouTube star, there's nothing to lose if your employer sees you expressing an opinion about Trump versus Hillary Clinton. There's nothing to lose if you have an opinion that is counter to the public opinion. You can get called a conspiracy theorist and it's not going to really matter. Like, for example, when I teach about propaganda, people will often say, oh, well, that doesn't actually happen. Well, wait a second. You can go get a book off the shelf called Manufacturing Consent. And I don't have the authors right off the top of my head, but it actually outlines a number of cases where media inform the public in such a way to create an opinion rather than inform the public to share facts. You can also look in the risk management world. That's where I spend most of my time. And you can get many books about risks where oil spills happened because maintenance wasn't done properly, and they knew the maintenance wasn't done, and they slacked on it, and now they spilled the oil, and ends up costing them more than if they would have just ran a simple risk management program to understand the risks before they got started. The point being here is that as a high-income professional, as an entrepreneur, you're not only busy, but you have something to lose. So you don't necessarily want to be out in the public. But you can, in front of your existing customers, put before them an opportunity to think about your value in the marketplace. Now, this isn't you're going to write them a letter and brag about how awesome you are and how smart you are. You always want to present through your client. So, hey, I want to share a story about Bob, who's a client, and here's the problem they had. Here's the challenge that we faced solving it, and then here's ultimately the solution. It's a case study. Now, you're going to get Bob's permission, and you're going to make Bob look good. But ultimately, you're going to cultivate 2 or 3 connections around this message, and then put that message out in front of people. I'm working with a peer who is introducing a new concept for analysis of a certain data set that we're working with in a risk management situation. Essentially, what they're going to do is take all the risks, and we're going to try to catalog them by common terms and common areas in order to see if there's any risk concentration. Now, none of that may have made any sense to anybody on the call, but ultimately what's happening here is, in order for upper management, for the executive level people to put the funding behind this effort, he needs to do a proof of concept, and he needs to do a white paper or a position paper about the application of this proof of concept. And that's just how you make things work. That's not going to write 5 presentations on LinkedIn and then talk at a conference about this particular model. This is proprietary information. This is inside resources that is going to help a business have a competitive advantage. This is stuff that you do close-knit, but it's just as important as this fantasy of going out there and being popular. If you saw the viewer counts on this channel, which is a podcast for Inside Strategic Relations, you would be shocked that there's near 0 people at times. I can present a podcast about a topic that in the future creates $100,000 for a client, and nobody will listen, or it'll be like over the lifetime, maybe 1,000 listeners. That's just the way it is. There's so much new content out there. There are so many people blabbing away on YouTube and on social media. There's so many distractions that simple note to a friend that says, hey, I've heard you've got a challenge in such and such an area. Here's some ideas I was throwing around. If you want to talk about this, let's move forward. Here's a concept I had that can solve the problem our team has been facing. And here's the background of the problem. Here's the approach, and here's how it might benefit us. If you can get all that down into a page or one page, print it front and back, and you can get that in front of your prospects, you can get that in front of your customer, you can get that in front of your business partners, you can get that in front of your team. That is a simple presentation that will put you in a light to help solve problems. Now, it always means more work for you, which is fine, but ultimately it means greater security and value for the business that you're working with, or for the long-term outcomes and objectives that you have. The key to understand here is that while you're locked in-house, there is the temptation to waste time on social media, on YouTube videos, and even acquiring new ideas and concepts. But what about those ideas and concepts that you already have and that you know work? Have you been able to outline them so that you can present them in a verbal presentation? Have you been able to outline them so you can present them to a skeptical approver? Are you in a position where this information can be used by your team to enhance their skills and abilities? All 3 of those concepts put you in an expertise role. It puts you that next step up. And the truth be told, sometimes that quiet reading and reflection about the challenges that you face in business or the goals and objectives that you have, very often that's more powerful than anything you can imagine, but it has a very limited reach if you're the only one who's discovered these new things. So, for example, in risk management, where you're looking at transactions in a system. I've discovered many years ago that much of the old manufacturing measurements work well as a primitive approach to measuring the performance of a process that has many transactions, and it works well to set up more complex KPIs, analytics, and metrics. And very often, if you got a project that's floundering, you got to start with the basics. So the basics I extract out of a book from the 1970s, and we implement them in very simple language as that first pass implementation, and then ultimately start getting that project back on track. Well, it takes communicating because these concepts are not known. People are looking for computerized automation, not simply writing down a list of steps and then having a person automate it at a lower salary or a lower wage than having your subject matter expert who created the steps executing it after a certain period of time. Folks, I could go into this for hours. In fact, I do have additional programs about improving process in improving your metrics and measures. I have programs about gaining influence in your marketplace by becoming the recognized expert. I have programs about how to connect with people and stay connected in a value-added situation through newsletters, through direct communications, which very often allows you to get under the radar and connect with decision makers in your industry. There was one time when I was doing IT services, I knew every Unix systems administrator in the state of Maryland. Okay, I was doing work in Maryland. And then at another point, I knew every Unix systems administrator in both Maryland and Virginia. And this is a very important thing to do when there was only like 25 of folks that could do the work that I was doing. We would even get into the position where we would notify each other before we're changing a job so that we knew when the position opened up, they could backfill us. Because sometimes you don't want to work for the same company, or you fixed all the problems and it's starting to get boring. Ultimately, by knowing that small network of people, I was able to leave one position and next day start someplace else. I was able to pick up a 6-figure job here and a 5-figure part-time job at the same time, working as an independent contractor. I was able to come in for 3 weeks to support a very exciting large data center move, which was not something that they could do all by themselves, but because the people in this network knew what was going on, they knew each other. They if they had questions, they turned to each other to ask questions. We were able to solve big problems faster without getting lost on the latest YouTube videos, the latest social media, the latest Reddit thread that goes on 1,000. We're in an attention world where people make money by capturing your attention, but they make money if they have your attention, not you. You don't gain influence, you don't gain power, you don't gain growth, you don't gain sophistication and stability if you are always looking outside rather than reflecting on what you've got and building on the strengths that you already have. And that's what you can do by reaching out to individuals right now, sending out letters, advocating their needs. Even if you're just running a simple newsletter or a simple update, Bill Clinton, George Bush, a couple of other politicians, they actually have a list of individuals that they'll just go down the list and write letters to them. And actually, Biden talked about that a couple times. Even though he jibble jabbers worse than I do, but he was going down a list. He says, I have a certain list of people that I contact every day, and I like to call them. That's a real thing, by the way. And if you want to build your business relationships, if you want to transform those relationships into profits, if you want to gain and grow, then it is very simple like that. It isn't the next YouTube video that goes viral. It isn't the post on LinkedIn or even a LinkedIn profile. It is the connections you have with individuals. And when all this stuff is behind us, it'll be people you can call to go play golf with. It'll be people you can go out on a boat with, or you can go out and visit as you get to travel again. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, and this has been about some of the simple things that you can do to build your network while you are contained or trapped here in our homes, which you're really not, but that's just the way it feels sometimes. Anyway, Justin Hitt, if you got questions, you can visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com.